This is Leon, the Director of Alumni at Evolutions. I got my good friend Peter here, who's our primary therapist and is also our trauma expert. So prior to me becoming a Director of Alumni, I was a counselor for many years. And a lot of individuals that have substance use disorders, a lot of the times it is accompanied, with some sort of trauma that has happened in their life. Not always, but in many cases there is. And at Evolution's Treatment Center, we don't just treat the substance use disorder, we look at the mental health picture too. And a lot of the times, again, with our clients, the trauma is going to pop up. So I wanted to, kind of speak with you. Maybe you can take the individual who's watching this that is thinking about coming to treatment, or alumni that has dealt with recent trauma, and kind of take them through your therapeutic process.
Okay. One of the things that I look at is, there's a international therapist, and his name is Gabor Mate, and he says, "You show me trauma, and I'll show you addiction." Okay. And what happens with it is we have this underlying issue. We have the Band-Aid of the addiction, but the underlying issue is something that's not addressed. And the more that we think that we're going to take this thing to our grave, we actually do. Because we're so afraid that what we say is not going to be taken exactly the way it is, and we're thinking that there's going to be judgment. Now, let me tell you something. If you put a name on anything that has happened to you, someone has either gone through it, is going through it, or knows someone that has gone through it. So there is no shame. There's the underlying thing of how are we going to get better. It's not just the addiction, it's also the trauma, the other things that are going on in your life. It's seeing you as a whole. It's a holistic approach of looking at the person and saying, all right, this is what's on with the family, this is what's going on with trauma, this is what's on with their finances. We got to look at all of these things because they all play a part. The trauma is one of the biggest aspects of it, because this is something that keeps on pulling us back in. And the more that we get pulled back in, the further we get down in that hole. The last thing that we want is you dig in a deeper hole. Make sure that you look at yourself. Ask yourself the question, do I need to get myself in a better spot? Is it just the addiction, or do I need to work on myself a little deeper? We need to look at ourselves and say, all right, I want to work on everything, and be willing to work on it. And know that there is no judgment when we're talking about trauma or addiction.
And one of the things, that is a major barrier to a lot of people's recovery is unresolved trauma. And you see that sometimes if somebody doesn't want to address their trauma, once you take the individual off the substances, right? Now what happens is whatever the trauma may have been, there's certain triggers, stimuli that happen throughout the day, and whatever the trigger may be, they what happens is the trigger happens, right?
Right.
And the prefrontal cortex, right, this part of the brain that's responsible for like critical thinking, what makes us human and does not make us an animal, does not make us an animal, it gets turned off. And once that gets turned off, we start functioning with the stem of the brain, right? They call it the reptilian brain.
Correct.
And when you're in that, with the reptilian brain, it's fight, flight, or freeze. And if we don't address that, the individual has a very hard time recovering, as they're constantly triggered by everything, and it's no way to live a sober AF life.
Right. And they're constantly in this survival mode. Let's get out of survival and start living. Mm-hmm. It's really what it comes down to. Different treatments. There's different treatments for different people. We might use cognitive processing therapy or cognitive behavioral therapy. It really depends on if we're working top down or bottom up therapy. It's really where it comes down to.